Hello! Today I want to share some of my thoughts on education. My name is Nolan Muntz, and I've been doing a PhD program in education at DePaul University in the Value Creation and Global Citizenship program. It's a program built off of Buddhist philosophers and educators, Tsunosaburo Makaguchi, Josei Toda, and Daisaku Ikeda, who did incredible things in their own right so far as both education and Buddhism are concerned, more so in regard to Buddhism. But their educational philosophy is really quite profound, and so I felt the need to explore this philosophy deeper, as I am a practicing Buddhist, and I really wanted to dive deep into the practice of education because I really fell in love with the connections I made as a teacher in China and exploring the tension that existed between students and education, which I felt and still feel is really unnecessary. The idea that students hate going to school and that parents know this and that it's not a one-off but the norm is a very disturbing fact to me, and I do think that that is wholly unnecessary. It doesn't make sense to me that that's as good as it gets. And so I'd like to explore the question of what is education, because I personally feel like education is it's a really essential pillar of society, and yet if you ask two people what is the purpose of education, what does good education look like, you'll probably get two wildly different answers. And I mean, the range is so great in terms of what is possible, and yet what we're offering, literally according to Common Core standards, is the same for every student. So many people are needlessly suffering, my son included. I have an 8-year-old, and you can ask any 8-year-old boy. I think it would be exceptional to find an 8-year-old boy who really loved school outside of the social connections that they make. And I think that those are so important, and I think that that's really more to the point of what education is really about. From my perspective as a Buddhist, I believe that all people inherently possess the unlimited capacity for courage, wisdom, and compassion, and that through those qualities, they can manifest the world of Buddhahood, or this inner happiness, this absolute happiness that wells forth from their life. And that the more people who manifest this world of Buddhahood, this absolute happiness from their life itself, the more harmonious and peaceful a society will have. These are the kinds of things that have the potential to eliminate war, which there are skeptics, I would even say pessimists, who believe that's not possible. But as an optimist myself, as someone who's very hopeful in general, I have to believe that it is possible. And personally, I believe it is only possible through education. And it's interesting because in Buddhism, we talk about doubt as sort of the center of all problems. It's the epicenter of all problems, that as you start to doubt that you have courage, that you can be wise, that you can be compassionate for others, things start to break down. And I think that that happens on the individual level, but also the societal level. And I think we've lost sight of what the purpose of education is. Having been very well educated from wealthy, middle-class Detroit suburban town, and having received both a degree, a bachelor's degree in the country, the United States State University, also a master's degree from abroad. Now, the pursuit of the obtainment of a PhD program in the United States, to me, that the purpose of many people's education is to find a job that they'll probably not be particularly fulfilled in. For some people, it's fulfilling, and for others, it's miserable. It's not guaranteed, right? Get paid a lot of money. If the work is something you know how to do and that you're good at or you're capable of, you should be happy. But the truth is, it's complicated than that, right? Speaking with my wife about this, And school has utterly failed to prepare students for the challenges of life in regard to giving them the capacity to overcome their problems. We've taught them how to memorize facts. We've taught them disciplined, if taught those things. But more importantly, we've shown them that their interests are secondary to the interests of society. Yet, those people who are dissatisfied with path life has taken them of society, they're the ones suffering, are the ones causing problems for everyone else. I think that that's completely unnecessary. And honestly, it's the successful who have this twisted, warped sense of what success looks like, what happiness looks like. And their happiness is they own and possess, and people that they can manipulate, can use them or put them in their pocket, so to say. And I just think it's a total failing of the educational system that would somehow fail to acknowledge what education is about. And so I want to share with you my perspective that the purpose of education is for people to become happy. And just to become happy by being exposed to smart people, teachers, moral people, it's really not about that. It's about being equipped with the tools to gain happiness. And I think discipline is not as valuable as we think it might be. Of course, discipline is great. I'll give you an example. I'm with ADHD that's really struggled with it my whole life. You probably wouldn't call me a very disciplined person, or maybe you would, because trials and tribulations, managed to pursue higher education at a great financial cost. But with great faith that I'll be able to change the world with education, and now through education, and that this is something that I have the privilege of diving into and report to other people therewith. I don't want people to listen to this video and think that I'm anti-teacher. I'm a licensed secondary teacher, a high school social studies teacher, and I thought for years is so wonderful because as a subject, a very open-ended. There aren't many tests or requirements advocated by the state. And so you could really design a progressive curriculum. And I don't mean progressive in terms of LGBTQAI plus sensitivity or even critical race theory or any of those arguments. I think they are distractions. The thing I hear constantly from conservatives is good arguments for why education is not enough. And I hear a lot of bad arguments for why it should be done this way. But fundamentally, the core of the problem, that is, I just don't think that we know what education is. And to analyze this topic, I point out that teachers go in thinking, I'm going to share my knowledge and my mentorship with students. This is something I could try and maybe I'll be good at. And they find out they are. And I think that's their humanity. I've met a lot of teachers who are like, well, I'm an expert in this field and I don't really want to mentor anybody. I don't get paid for that. They're right. When you sign up to be a teacher, you're signing up to share facts and knowledge with students. You have a particular skill and you're sharing that with students and you're getting paid to do this. And the sad thing is, I think that you're so much more than that as a teacher, and people aren't ready and don't realize that you're also a social worker and a therapist, and you didn't sign up for that. You signed up for something much more shallow than that, unfortunately, and for shallow reasons. Back to why discipline really isn't a very good quality to pursue in education. They say that there are two qualities that mark a highly successful person, and that's passion and perseverance. Well, we don't teach passion. We teach exposure to a very narrow range of what people could enjoy and get from life. And we say at your own peril that if you choose not to persevere, this is not going to be a good experience for you. And for many people, it's not, because the passion's really not there. And without passion, it's very hard to persevere. And so discipline is almost like perseverance without passion. The purpose of education is to become happy. And the means by which we can achieve that is by giving a chance to really experience passion. And passion doesn't come from your parents telling you you're going to like this, or a teacher saying you have to do this, study for this, do that. It's never from outside. Passion comes from within. If you don't have an opportunity to express what's truly important to you in an educational setting, which I don't think any Americans outside of some very, very select schools separated by great distances, I don't think most people have a chance to do that. And in a public school, and they do, it's the teacher that realizes that something is fundamentally wrong with being told how to learn and what to learn, instead of really using their judgment, a genuine interest in the children. I can't tell you how many teachers I've met that just had rotten attitude towards the children, disparaged them, thought of them as stupid or weak, bullied even, and then laughed about it with the student awkwardly laughing back. I mean, they normalized bullying. And no wonder that bullying is so pervasive in public schools. But I think it starts with this ultimate form of bullying, that place when you set out a curriculum that's even a measurement and parameter for teacher success that says, you must learn these things in this way or these ways, and wildly different from teacher to teacher. They have so many mixed messages. This great state of confusion that modern education has created, and it's not even 200 years old. I mean, public education as we know it is a very new concept. It's born from the military and Horace Mann. I think a lot of people know this, but if you don't, it's worth exploring. And I think I want to start talking more about education, reviewing videos on education, and explaining where I think people are on the right track and where people are totally off base. Because the criticism that the conservative right has against the progressive left, that education has turned into this monopoly by which we can't have a discussion on the basis of education, historical reality that it's come from segregation and racism. That's a fact. I don't care what anybody says. There are concerted efforts to punish people from certain geographical backgrounds, and that's wrong. But at the same time, to not be able to have a discussion or never change or to double down on things that we know don't work, that's madness. And in fact, it's psychotic, right? Insanity. When you pursue, for the sake of an industrial model, a one-size-fits-all stroke of the pen. And so we have to have this discussion, and I think it's the most important discussion we'll have.